everybody out there on the internet watching the new members class. We've just been talking a little bit about how the folks here came to Trinity and what they like about the church, and I would love to hear from you sometime about why it is that you've come to Trinity. And really, that's what we're going to talk about in the course of today for the most part. This is a 3-Sunday course. And so today we'll have mostly talk about this parish and what it means to be a member here. We are an Episcopal church, and that really matters in terms of how our worship service looks and how our faith and practice looks. But we'll really get into that more in the next 2 times. So next time we'll look especially at the Book of Common Prayer and how that shapes what we do on Sunday morning. And then the 3rd Sunday we'll have some more stuff about what it means to be part of the Diocese of Wisconsin, and how we kind of fit in the national Episcopal Church. I'm going to talk with the people here about this handout, which I know some of you I've already sent online, but if you are watching this and you did not get the handout that says membership process at the top of it, please email me, davidmowers@trinitybaraboo.org, and I would be happy to send it to you so that you understand what's about to happen here. So we're an Episcopal church. Episcopal is the Greek word for bishops. That's all it is, it's just the Greek word for bishops. But we effectively are kind of the American branch of the Church of England. So you may or may not know, Church of England began as a separate entity from the Roman Catholic Church in the 1520s when King Henry VIII wanted to divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and the Pope, who was Catherine's cousin, would not give it to him. And so he said, fine, I am the supreme governor of the Church of England, and the Pope hath no jurisdiction in this realm. And basically he started the Church of England, and it was still a very Catholic-looking church, not very affected by the Protestant Reformation, which was already happening at that point in Europe. But the one thing that was very un-Roman Catholic about it was that Henry was the boss. Zoom ahead 250 years when that came to the United States and the Episcopal Church started in 1789 in Philadelphia. In other places of the world, like in Canada, the same body as the Episcopal Church is called the Anglican Church, which comes from the word English. Anglican comes in English. And it was not hip to be English in 1789 in Philadelphia. So the founders of the Episcopal Church had a marketing problem, which they solved by, instead of calling themselves Anglican, they called themselves Episcopal. We're the church with bishops that just happens to come from England, who we just beat in a little war, but we won't talk about that. So that's why we're called Episcopal. And because we're the church with bishops, the way we join the church usually involves a bishop. So this is the membership process part. So we do membership slightly different here than other Episcopal parishes. So here what happens to become a member is I have a conversation with you, and then you give us just some basic information, and I'll have a form for you in week 3 that would let you give that to me. And basically what we need is your contact information, your date and place of birth, and your date and place of baptism. And we don't need the certificate necessarily, and even sometimes people have trouble coming up with the actual date that they were baptized if they don't have the certificate. Even if we can get to the year, that's probably good enough. But that's what we have to record in our great big book where we keep the membership. And then usually the official way that you join an Episcopal church is to be confirmed or received by the bishop. Our bishop is the Bishop of Wisconsin. His name is Bishop Matthew Gunter. And Wisconsin has right now about 100 Episcopal churches. So if he visits an Episcopal church every Sunday, and he doesn't visit every Sunday, but probably 40 Sundays a year he's visiting somewhere. If he visits somewhere, every Sunday, 52 Sundays a year, it's still going to take him 2 years to get back to every place on Sunday morning to confirm and receive people. So he also sometimes does regional confirmations on Saturdays, where churches will gather at one place and then confirm people from a number of congregations. I know that happened in the southeast part of the state yesterday. In Hartford, there were people from a number of congregations that got together, and he confirmed and received people. But what I found is that a lot of times when people decide that they want to be here, they need a pastoral rite to say, I am now a part of this church, and I'm part of the family of the people that are part of this church. And they need that before the bishop becomes available to actually confirm or receive people. And so what we do is we commission new members whenever there are people who are ready to join the church. And all that is basically is you take this class, you give us the information that we need to record you in the roll, and then on the day that new members are commissioned, which is going to be on Sunday, May the 10th, you just turn up to church, and right before the peace, in the place where we usually do the confession of sin, I'll invite everybody forward to the step here, and we just say a brief prayer that's in the bulletin together. I introduce everybody claps, and then you go back to your seat, and that's it. And then I say, the next time the bishop is around, please consider being confirmed or received. You get confirmed if you haven't been confirmed before in a denomination where you're confirmed by the bishop. So I'm going to say some more about my background in a minute, but I grew up in the United Methodist Church, and in that tradition, you get confirmed by your local pastor, not by a bishop. So when I came into the Episcopal Church, I had to be confirmed again, as it were, because I had never been confirmed by a bishop. If you are coming from the Roman Catholic Church and were confirmed there, you were confirmed by a bishop because that is how they do it. And we don't ever confirm again because it's a sacrament like baptism. We don't rebaptize people. We don't reconfirm people. So if you're coming from Rome, the bishop receives you. Basically, instead of praying the one prayer on that page, he prays the other prayer on that page, and there's no difference otherwise. It's just a terminology thing. But we don't reconfirm people once they've been confirmed if they were confirmed by a bishop. Only exception to that is if you're coming from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, ELCA, which we are in full communion with in the Episcopal Church. And sometimes their local pastors confirm people. If you're coming from the ELCA, we receive you because we're in full communion with the ELCA. I could be a pastor of an ELCA church. An ELCA pastor could serve as a priest of this church because we have mutual whatever that is. We can substitute for either. So that's the process piece. So we're doing the class, and then we have commissioning of new members in May. And then when the bishop is around next time, he was just here in December, so it'll be a bit probably. Then we will do a confirmation class at that point with anybody that needs to be confirmed or received, which will probably be some of you, and then some other people that got missed last time or whatever. Sometimes people hang around here for quite a while before they get confirmed or received, even if they've joined the congregation, which is not ideal, but it happens. So that's that. Questions? That makes sense so far? Okay. And then on the bottom of this handout, there is a list of practices of Trinity Church members that the vestry published some years ago now. And this is, I want to say what this isn't. This is not a checklist of the things you have to do to not go to hell or something. That's not how we do that here at all. And it's not like if you don't do the stuff on this list, then God won't like you or Father Dave won't like you. No, that's not what this is. But it is it's a list of hopes, really, that we hope that as Trinity Church people that we all come to do these things while we're here at Trinity. And you'll see that it's basically like basic Christianity kinds of things. There's nothing that's real revolutionary in here at all. But to have a pattern of following Jesus in ways that are like tangible and where we can talk about that as something other than just a feeling. So that's really what we're going for here. So we'll just read through these together, and then we can talk about them with those that are here. And then online, if you have questions about any of these in particular, I'm always happy to have conversations further about them. So first, we aspire to attend worship each Sunday when we are healthy in town and not working. We ask all members to make regular worship attendance a priority. And because I know some of our people are coming from the Roman Catholic Church, we do not do holy days of obligation here. Like, that is not part of our vocabulary. We do take worship seriously, and we think it's important to make it a regular practice in our lives, but there is no day when we're obligated to worship more than any particular other day. But a priority certainly of when you can join us on Sunday, join us on Sunday.
Because you want to.
You come because you want to, exactly. And we talked about that before the camera turned on, but that's really kind of what we're about here at Trinity, is we want to practice Christian faith in a way that isn't tied to shame and guilt and those things, and to say we want to be here, we want to show up. And I talk to my kids about giving thanks back to God. Like, we have so much in our lives to be thankful for, and when we get together for worship, like, part of that is to say thank you for all that we have. The word Eucharist is the Greek word for giving thanks, so it is a way to give thanks to God for all of the goodness that we have. We aspire to some daily pattern of reading Scripture, so some way to read the Bible on a daily basis. There are a number of ways to do that. Some of them are fairly like Anglican, and they go back in our tradition for a long time. There is a pattern of reading Scripture in the prayer book, where there's readings for each day, morning and evening, all year round on a 2-year cycle. And you can read those certainly as your pattern. Some people prefer a different kind of reading plan, which is fine. You can do through the Bible in a year, or there are other kinds of reading plans and they're all over the internet. So you can do it all kinds of different ways. And if you're not even sure where to begin, that's fine. And certainly I can help you with how you might think about starting to do that. But we want everybody to have a pattern of reading Scripture somehow. And if you don't, then I'm happy to help. And there are people in the church too that do have patterns of reading Scripture and have had them for a long time, and they might share those with you too if you ask. So that's kind of the tone of all of these. You may or may not be doing them now, but we'd like you to consider starting when it works for you. 3, very similarly, we aspire to a daily pattern of prayer. And again, there's prayers in the prayer book that you could pray morning and evening every day according to a certain calendar, and that's a way to pray that is very Anglican, and it's been things that people have been doing for 400 years or so in a similar fashion. But there's lots of ways to pray too. And so having some pattern of prayer on a daily basis is important, and we want you to have one. And if you don't know how to do that, that's fine, and we'll help anybody that needs help. 4, we aspire to having a ministry in the church and a ministry outside the church. Some tangible way that you share your gifts with people inside and outside the church. We want everybody to have some way that they are a minister here. That can be very simple. Maybe you're an usher that hands out bulletins on Sunday morning and helps pass the plate and that sort of thing, or you help with Altar Guild, which is the group that gets the altar area ready for Sunday morning and prepares the bread and wine for communion, and when things need to be changed in the church as far as like hangings and that kind of thing, then they change all of those things. That's a very background job where they often work on Saturday before the Sunday service. Maybe it's hosting coffee hour sometime, maybe it's teaching children Sunday school, maybe it's, it could be very simple stuff. We open the church 4 times a year to be a place where people can go for a public restroom when there's big high traffic events on the square. So during spring and fall fair in the square, and the holiday lights parade and the circus parade, the building is open, and maybe you're just a church sitter that day where you're sitting outside the front of the church and welcoming people and making sure that people can get in to use the bathroom and that sort of thing. That's a ministry, and that takes a few hours one day, and then you're done. Whatever it is that you do, just do something. And then similarly outside the church, and some people have jobs where you work with people and your job is very much a ministry, whether it's called that or not. If you're serving people, if you're helping people, that's a ministry. Otherwise, finding some way to do that out in town, we want everybody to have some outlet where it's where they're serving the wider community somehow. And again, there's just like 1,000 ways that you could do that. So, and many people that come here as new members are already doing something in that regard anyway. So, 5, we aspire to tithe to Trinity Church, which means to give 10% of one's income. We ask all members to participate to whatever level they're able in each fall's giving campaign, and to increase their contribution towards a tithe as they're able. And again, this is aspirational. Most of our people do not tithe, cannot tithe. And what you hear from me during the giving campaign every fall is we want people to give joyfully. What they can give cheerfully, we want them to give. And we trust that we will have enough if people do that. And like, don't go on autopilot and just think that, oh, I'll just give the same amount I gave last year every single year. Because you may have noticed that there's inflation and other things, and that affects the church just as much as it affects anybody else. And there are expenses that grow and change over time, and whatnot. So to the extent that you're able to give something, we want you to give what you can give happily each fall, and to fill out a pledge card during the fall campaign, which is the way we make a budget for the following year. People tell us on the pledge card, here's kind of the lowest amount that I'm going to likely give in the following year. And then you're always, of course, welcome to give more than that, but it's a way for us to know we're not going to have less than this, and then we build the budget based on everybody's card that comes in. So that always happens in October and November, that campaign for the coming year. 6, we aspire to find safe friends to share real life with at Trinity Church. We hope that all members can find at least 1 or 2 friends with whom they can grow close friendships based on common faith and trust. You're not going to like everybody here. That's part of being in a church. Not everybody is going to be your friend. But hopefully you find some friends. And if you're like me, most of us, you can't actually have that many. Like, it takes a lot of work to maintain friendships. And so if you were friends with everybody, you would not do anything else. But it's important in the life of faith, I think, to have people who are Christian friends who can take care of us when, and who we can take care of when there are things going on. And we hope that you find people like that here at Trinity over time. It's one of the reasons why coffee hour is actually really important to us. No, it's okay. At coffee hour, it is a way for us to just begin to get to know other people in the congregation. But obviously, if you've been here very long, you know that coffee hour sometimes goes an hour after service is done, long time. And so you don't feel like you have to go all the time or anything, but it is a way that people come to be connected to other people here, and that's really what we're shooting for. It's not really a place where you can stay anonymous for very long.
No, that's okay. And I've met some nice people.
Yeah. And, some people go to church and they want to be anonymous, but this is really not the size congregation where that's very possible. So you're probably going to get to be known before very long, the longer you hang around here. So hopefully there are some good connections that are made that turn into friendships. And then 7, last thing, we aspire to solve conflicts directly using the steps Jesus taught his disciples. Basically that we go to the person who our conflict is with or who our disagreement is with first, before we go to Baraboo United on Facebook or something to kvetch about something that someone has done. We don't want to spread gossip or rumors. If you hear things that are rumored to be happening about church, come to me or come to either of the wardens who are the officers of the vestry and just ask, like, I'm hearing this, can you clarify, like, is this happening? And certainly if there's ever disagreement about a decision that gets made, feel free to come to me or to the members of the vestry or whatever group it is that's made the decision, so that we can try to hammer out a way to respond directly. Rumors and gossip are toxic to human community, and most of y'all have probably at some point been in a church where they were part of what was going on, and we really try to avoid it here as much as we can. So this is not a place where there's rampant rumors or gossip that I'm aware of, and that's a good thing. So y'all keep it that way. So any questions about any of these?
No.
Okay. So let me say a little bit. People often want to know about me if you are new to the congregation. So I've been priest here for a little more than 9 years, and I've been ordained as a deacon in the Episcopal Church for 12 years in June, and as a priest for 11 years in June. I grew up in the United Methodist Church and in northern Illinois, so about halfway between Rockford and DeKalb. in a little town. And when I was in high school, my mom said to my dad on the way to our Methodist church, "Hey, there's a lot of people that have left our church and are going over to this Pentecostal church that's around the corner. Let's just go there once and see all the people we know." And they never left that church. We buried my dad from that church, and then my mom was there until she moved out of town, which was only just a few years ago. So for about 23 or so years, she was a member of that congregation. So Pentecostal is like the closest thing we have in Baraboo is like Assembly of God. That's the kind of place it was. And so that is where probably the most formative stuff, or a lot of the formative stuff for me happened. And I started to wonder about wanting to be a youth pastor when I was in high school. And so I went to the Assembly of God Bible College in Minneapolis for my undergraduate degree. First year there was really good. And then the next 3, I got progressively more angry at the kind of Christian faith that I was seeing, especially in chapel, which was required 5 days a week for us to go to. So we had a lot of church, and a lot of it was pretty unsatisfying to me. And by the time I got done there, I never really doubted that I was a Christian or in Jesus or God. I mean, I've been an every Sunday Christian for most of my life, and so none of that was in question. But because we had moved denominations before, I knew that what I was experiencing wasn't the only way to be a Christian, and I was pretty sure that I needed to find a different one in order to keep my faith and my sanity. And so I left school thinking that what I was going to do now with my life was teach college, New Testament or theology, like maybe in a religious context, Bible college or some kind of Christian university setting. So I went to seminary, really burnt out on church work, and the place where I had gone to church in college, I left right at the end of my senior year in college, and I went to seminary in the same place, so I was staying in town, but I had changed churches. And so I went to seminary with no intent of doing church work, which is a very funny reason to go to seminary. And sense of humor, I suppose, if someone has one. So what I thought I was going to do was just blast through a master's degree as quickly as I could, and then go on to like a doctoral program, and then teaching. And then a lot of things happened. I ran out of money in seminary, and decided I needed to go part-time rather than full-time. So it took me longer to finish my degree. And then in the middle of that, my dad died quite suddenly. He had a brain aneurysm, and he lived 3 weeks after the aneurysm, but essentially dropped dead. He never made it out of ICU after the aneurysm. So he was 57. I was 26 that summer. So that's been 15 years ago now. But that drops like a bomb in the middle of your world. You know that. And so for about a year, I was in, just grieving and going through that. And then when I got done with the biggest part of that grief after that year or so, I really just didn't want to do any more school. I just thought life is too short for this. And what I really want is to go out into a parish somewhere and be kind of anonymous, and just be with people. And when they have the bomb drop in their life, like I have had in my life, like being able to be with people and pray with people and have conversations. And sometimes that provokes crises of faith or questions about faith when you have something like that happen. And I want to be around for just having those conversations. And so I started discernment in the Diocese of Minnesota, which is where we lived then, in 2012. And that's the formal process of becoming a priest or deacon in the Episcopal Church. And it takes quite a while. It's a pretty rigorous process. So started in 2012. I was made deacon in 14 and priest in 15. And I served, so in there I met Elizabeth, and we were engaged at the end of 2012 and married in 2013 fall. She's an attorney by training and is a member of the bar in Wisconsin and Minnesota. but is currently a 7th grade English teacher at Jack Young Middle School here in Baraboo. So, so that's not really it's not really how you prepare for that career. Law school doesn't help you with 12-year-olds. But she's in her 4th year at the middle school there. Yeah, and then we have 3 kids who are 10, 8, and 7, girl and 2 boys, and I'm involved in a whole bunch of things just outside of church in town, but it's been a really good place to serve for me, and a really good church. So some of that affects how I do things now, and certainly like the seriousness with which I take the Bible. That comes from my Pentecostalism, I think, and learning to read the Bible and to love the Bible in Pentecostal circles. I read it differently now, but certainly, like I learned a lot about what I know about the Bible in that sojourn and at college, where I really got a very good education, even though it drove me crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that is. Anything else? Any questions you wonder about?
Yeah.
No, not yet. All right, good. Well, let's talk. Great. Let's just talk a little bit about local parish and how the parish works here, and then we can be done for today. And then we'll get into the wider stuff next time. So we worship on Sunday morning out of the Book of Common Prayer, which we'll discuss at length. That'll probably be most of what we talk about next week. But the Book of Common Prayer, the first one, that was kind of the definitive edition of the prayer book, was published in 1661. And there were some versions of it that predated that in the mid-1500s. But really, one of the things about the Protestant Reformation that caught on right away in England was the idea that people should worship in their own language rather than in Latin. Even our Roman Catholic friends have come around to that, but it's only been in the last 60 years or so that they, and not all of them, but that most of them have decided that that is in fact a good thing. But that has been a real thing for Protestant churches and for the Episcopal Church since just about its formation. And so the English Church, officially, its prayer book is still that 1662, I think I said 61, but a 1662 Book of Common Prayer is still the official prayer book of the Church of England. But if you go to church in England on a Sunday, you will not hear the 1662 prayer book, because they have a book of alternative services that is also used in worship most often. And it's basically like the difference between worshiping the way we worship here on Sunday morning in kind of formal English, but there's no these and thous, and it doesn't sound like Shakespeare. It's just a little more elevated than what we would use in regular life. 1662 sounds like Shakespeare. So we have, in our prayer book, we have Holy Eucharist Rite 1, which we don't use very often here. But that sounds like Shakespeare. And in fact, the English words of that were composed in part by Thomas Cranmer, who was Archbishop of Canterbury from 1525 to 1550. And he was the first author of the first prayer books before the monarch changed, and then the next monarch decided that he should be burned, and he was. So, yes. So people have paid in blood for the prayer book. Anyway, so our each province of the Anglican Communion, and there are 38 of them now, roughly each country, but some of the provinces contain multiple countries, have their own prayer book. And it looks, from province to province, they each look similar, but there are unique things about each one. So if you go anywhere in the world to an Anglican church, in some places also called an Episcopal church, you will recognize the order of service, because most of the order in which things are done on Sunday morning is going to be the same here as it is, at the cathedral in Tokyo, Japan. It's going to be in Japanese, so good luck. But you will recognize the order that things are done in, because the prayer book tradition is part of what makes Anglicanism united in the world. It's not the same as the Roman liturgy, where in the Vatican, things are translated and then distributed, and so it's really done from the same translation in every place, and everybody uses the exact same liturgy. It's not that. It's that we have a prayer book that has a service for Eucharist in it. The order is similar, phrasing, wording, all of that is different from province to province, but the shape of the service is going to be something recognizable. So we don't have a pope in Anglicanism. We don't have a hierarchy to speak of, but we have a diocesan bishop, Matt Gunter, and he's kind of technically my boss. But really, I also work for the vestry here, which is what we call, what they would call in Rome the parish council. But the vestry is the group that's responsible for taking care of the property and the finances of the church, and for maintaining relationship with the clergy. So they and I work together to do what we do here. So we worship on Sunday morning out of the prayer book. The vestry and I together determine how to use the building otherwise, and the vestries that I have worked with here and I have been very aligned about trying to use the building for the benefit of the community in kind of every way that we can, as often as we can. So there are I think there's 4 weekly AA meetings, or Al-Anon, or I think it's AA and Al-Anon are the 4 weekly meetings that happen in the parish hall. There's a regional AA gathering every month here to celebrate people's sobriety anniversary on the 2nd Saturday of the month. Girl Scouts use the building sometimes, community groups that ask. Usually we don't charge them, or if we do, we charge them very little. Things that are, in accordance with our values, but otherwise we try to make it so that there's stuff happening in the building often, because we know it's a resource that we can offer, and sometimes space is limited in other places. So we try to do that. And then the vestry and I together do things like budgeting for the church finances every year. We receive $0 from anywhere else in terms of making the budget every year. So the diocese doesn't give us money, maybe for a project or on a grant basis here and there, but like for our regular operating, our revenue comes from 2 places. One is from the plate, so from what people give, and then we have an endowed savings a fund that's a little more than $500,000 at the moment, that we ask people to give what they can cheerfully, and then whatever else we need to make the budget work, we take out of endowed savings. And in the short and medium term, that is a good solution. We are taking too much out of our endowed savings on a year-to-year basis, and we need to slowly whittle that down, or eventually we're going to run out of money. But that's a problem for 5 to 10 years from now at least. I think our estimates last year said that we have 11 years left of taking out the amount we're taking now before it becomes hard to pay a full-time priest. So that's kind of the time window of the problem, is we need to shore that up. And we don't need that much more than we're making, than we're giving every year. If we had another $30,000 in giving every year, we would make it. So one of the things that's been really encouraging about the growth here over the last 5 years is that it's been growth both numerically in terms of the number of people in the pew on Sunday morning, but also giving has increased over that time as well. And those are problems that every Protestant church in the country is facing, and we're much better positioned than many here. So I'm hopeful that if we just continue to grow and continue to invite people to be part of the community and to give what they can when they can, that eventually the money will follow, and that will take care of itself. But nationally, the Episcopal Church is not growing, and that has a lot to do with the age of the people in the Episcopal Church. Largely, I think our average age as a denomination right now is like 61. So the average Episcopalian is 61 years old, more or less. So you can see that we are bucking some trends here in some important ways, in that especially amongst new people here, the average age tends to be like younger than me even. So that's a really promising thing for this parish. but it is not necessarily the case nationally. And to have any kind of endowed savings that we can rely on and aren't just like completely exhausting in a year that makes us in a more secure financial position than a lot of places are. So that's one thing the vestry has been working on, is to figure out how to handle that, and also figure out how to continue to invite people and grow, and to get people integrated into the congregation and get new people doing things and that sort of thing. Not because we need the money. That's like the 7th or 8th most important reason we want new people to come. We want people first to come to have a life-giving connection with God through Jesus in the Episcopal Church amongst us, and that's like the most important. And down the list of ways is like, yeah, it'd be great to grow the budget a little bit so that we can keep doing what we're doing for a really long time. And thankfully, we're not too far away from being able to do that. So our diocese with our bishop is that's the basic building block of Anglican organization. And so every year there's a diocesan convention where we send delegates from this congregation to vote on various things, and they pass resolutions, and some of those affect us. Like one that's comes up every year is there's always a clergy minimum compensation resolution that sets the rates for what you pay clergy. The minimums, you can always go over them, and there's some stuff based on experience where if your priest has 0 to 2 years, then they get one amount as the minimum, and if they have 3 to 4 or 3 to 8 or something, then there's another amount, like a teacher salary scale. So that happens, and we have to follow that. When the convention passes that resolution, then we follow that here. A lot of what happens at convention level does not necessarily, you don't necessarily see on Sunday morning, or you might hear about it a little bit, but it wouldn't like really obviously affect us. The one place where it does affect us is if there was a change in clergy here, then the diocese would assist with a search for a new rector and whatnot, and be pretty involved in that process usually. But obviously it's been 9 years since we've gone through that here, so a lot of people that are here weren't here the last time we had to search for a clergy person. So a little bit about this space before we go today, because the building is a big part of what makes this congregation what it is. This church was built in 1892. And at the time it was just this room essentially, and then the basement underneath it. And we know that the light pendants over the nave, these all are, we think, original, if not to the building, then to electrification for sure. We don't know if it was built before electricity and then that was retrofitted, or if it was actually built with electric in it. The pews are probably original. The desk and what's called the sedia, where the priest sits, those are not. We know they're not. And the altar area actually is not either, because when this sanctuary was built, up until the time of the Second Vatican Council in the Roman Catholic Church, which is 62 to 65, even in the Episcopal Church, all altars would have been pushed up against the wall and actually would have been built into the wall. So the priest would have to celebrate Holy Communion facing the altar away from the people. So the priest had his back to the people, as it were. And our chapel altar, off to the front left of the church, is actually fixed to the wall that way. So if we have communion in there, I have to celebrate facing the altar back to the people, because there's no other way to do it. But in here, after Vatican II, the rector at that time, whose name was Arthur Kephart, he was here from 1961 to 1981. He and the vestry at the time decided to renovate the altar area of the church to reflect the liturgical changes from the council, and one of them was to have a freestanding altar that people could gather around. And in the Roman church, sometimes this new church buildings that were built in the late 60s to early 70s, like the parish church that was closest to where I grew up, is a circle. The building is circular, and the altar is right in the middle, so you're truly in the round. Obviously here, this is a real tall, narrow building. You just can't really move the altar very far, because it just wouldn't work. Even out here, it would not work real well. But they pushed it away from the wall. It is freestanding, so the priest can stand and face the people while celebrating Holy Communion. And the reredos, which is the wooden part behind that, was done at the same time, as well as the windows above the reredos. So those are all kind of late 60s to early 70s in origin. The reredos has 4 saints, 2 on the left, and then 2 angels in the middle, and then 2 more saints on the right. And they are the patrons of the British Isles. So from the left, Patrick of Ireland, David of Wales, Andrew of Scotland, and George of England. And Arthur had a thing for England. He was a real Anglophile. But appropriate, given an Episcopal Church and the English heritage that we have, for the patrons of Britain to be behind the altar there. Some of these fixtures, even like the candlesticks that are out here, are quite old. There are some pictures of the candelabras from a wedding of Bob Madelon and Jewel Osborne, both of whom died. Jewel died a little bit before I came. I buried Bob in 2023. And so they were married in like the probably mid-40s, and those candelabras were on the altar at their wedding. So they're at least that old, so approaching 100 years old, if not more than that. So it's a mix of really old stuff and somewhat old stuff in terms of what we use for worship. There used to be a pipe organ in here, and so the pipes remain, but they are all decorative now. They don't do anything. And then out here in the nave, the windows went in a few stages. The big west window would have been original to the building, 1892. And there were probably stained glass windows down the sides that in a similar style to that when it was built. The middle 2 windows on both sides, we think were done in the late 1920s, probably before the stock market crash. And then the 4 windows on each side in the front and the 4 in the back were for sure done later during Arthur's time as rector, so in the 70s sometime. And Jeanette Zissel, who's our current senior warden, did a book on the windows of Trinity Church a few years ago, and copies, actually there's some in the breezeway, and so that goes through each window and talks about them, but it's kind of fun that they're in different styles, and yet it all kind of works. So, and there's more in the chapel that were done during Arthur's time as well. So we have it's an electric organ, and then the air conditioning was only done in the church during my predecessor's time. I think Father Seefeld had that put in 2011. So before then it was not air conditioned in this church in the summertime, which would have been quite warm. And actually those air conditioners all need to be replaced because Fujitsu no longer supports those units after 15 years. So at some point we will we'll replace all of those, and probably in about 4 weeks have to turn them all on for the summer. So, but it is nice to have an air-conditioned church for sure. Anything else about fixtures or about being in the church you can think of that you wonder about?
No, you're a wealth of knowledge.
Okay, well, you haven't been around long enough to learn the truth, but...
Well, you're faking it really good.
Thank you. Yeah, so that is some about how the parish works and some about how this particular building works, and then we'll talk about the specifics of worship and whatnot some more next week. And hopefully, if you all on the internet have questions that you would like me to address next time, I'd be happy to do that. Just email me, davidmowers@trinitybaraboo.org, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. I think I'll stop the tape, but we'll see all of you online the next time, and hopefully in worship too.